St. John of the Cross, who lived between 1542 and 1591, is one of the greatest Christian mystics, Spanish poets, doctors of the Church, reformers of Spanish monasticism, and he is the co-founder of the contemplative order of Descalced Carmelites. John became a Carmelite monk at Medina del Campo in Spain in 1563 and was ordained a priest in 1567. St. Teresa of Avila, the celebrated mystic, enlisted his help in her restoration of Carmelite life to its original observance of austerity. A year later, he opened the first Descalced Carmelite monastery. Reform, however, caused friction within the order and led to his imprisonment, first in 1576 and again in 1577 at Toledo, where he wrote some of his finest poetry. Escaping in August 1578, he later won high office in the order, becoming vicar provincial for Andalusia from 1585 to 1587. Near the end of his life, the Descalced Carmelites were again troubled by dissension, and he withdrew to absolute solitude. John schematized the steps of mystical ascent, a self-communion that in quietude leads the individual from the inharmonious distractions of the world to the sublime peace of reunion between the soul and God. John's scheme combines a poetic sensitivity for the nuances of mystical experience with a theological and philosophical precision, guided by his study of St. Thomas Aquinas. By virtue of his intense poems, Cantico Espiritual, the spiritual canticle, Noche Oscura de Alma, the dark night of the soul, and Llama de Amor Viva, the living flame of love, he achieves preeminence in Spanish mystical literature, expressing the experience of the mystical union between the soul and Christ. In The Dark Night, perhaps his best-known work, he describes the process by which the soul sheds its attachment to everything and eventually passes through a personal experience of Christ's crucifixion to his glory. The lyric consists of 8 stanzas, in which the soul sings of the fortunate adventure that it had in passing through the dark night of faith to union with the beloved. Though the lyric verses of the spiritual canticle, one of John's lesser-known works, do not mention Christ explicitly, St. John of the Cross, according to his own commentary, sings in them about the loving exchange between the soul and Christ, the bridegroom. The soul undoubtedly represents John himself, and the stanzas disclose the colloquy of love that must have occurred between himself and Christ. Asking ourselves why John expressed this loving communication in poetry, we find the clue to an answer in his prologue. There he explains that the stanzas are utterances of love flowing from mystical understanding. In stanza 25, he tells how the beloved can set the soul ablaze by a loving touch, like a hot spark leaping from a fire. The will is then enkindled in loving, desiring, praising, and thanking God. The bride calls these acts flowings from the balsam of God. Born out of the mystical understanding that was communicated to John's soul in the touch of the spark, these stanzas, or canticles, are then like flowings or outpourings from the balsam of God. Although these canticles resulted from a loving flowing out of abundant mystical understanding, they cannot and do not declare fully the understanding or experience. John asks in the prologue, who can describe in writing the understanding he, the beloved, gives to loving souls in whom he dwells? And who can express with words the experience he imparts to them? Who finally can explain the desires he gives them? Certainly no one can. not even they who receive these communications. It is precisely in John's reluctance to declare himself all-knowing about God, or his beloved, that reveals the influence of St. Thomas Aquinas. At the heart of Thomas's theology is the ineffability of God. We can know God, but never know God fully. Also reflected in John's writing is the primary place the book, the Song of Songs, plays in his theological project. In this biblical work, John found an expression of his own profound experience, and also found the scenes, images, and words, even though sometimes foreign to his environment, with which to create his own work. Part of the ineffable character of God is, in fact, God's love. As soon as we think we understand it, comprehend it fully, or grasp it in its entirety, it has slipped through our fingers one more time to reveal itself to be greater than our imagination. So it is in the Song of Songs, as the writer writes about his beloved. So it is for John, who writes about Christ. As you engage the verses today of John's magnificent canticle, listen for the way the poet seeks to describe, but never fully describes, the nature and the love of God. As you read, contemplating your own life, where is God bigger than your imagination? Where has the depth, width, and length of God exceeded your own expectations?